Donald speaking for the SNP, who has 10 minutes. Stuart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm afraid to say that this is a dreadful bill, one which will destroy opportunities for future generations and will split even more families apart. It's a bill that will result in many thousands of EU nationals losing their rights in this country overnight, and which will extend the reach of the hostile environment still further.
Well, it didn't take too long for the latest in a long line of the Rainbow Unicorn Delegates representatives to parrot some inane bollocks that will be taken at face value by their cult members. That being, of course, the hostile environment this time round. You notice the SNP never come out of the woodwork to talk about the record level of non-EU immigration that's been entering the UK year on year. Under Theresa May's watch, and as far as I'm aware, it's unchanged last year under Boris Johnson, nothing's changed. In fact, the numbers are going up year on year consistently. But yet, the SNP sit there and talk about a hostile environment. They talk about the plight. They talk about the racism, etc., etc. They never talk about the very thing that destroys this bollocks narrative of a hostile environment, because I can't quite get my head around the concept of there being a hostile environment when said hostile environment opens its doors to allowing record levels of non-EU immigration to this country that these people seem to have a bit of an obsession with when it comes to enrichment. Very easy to sit there on your high horse and grandstand when Scotland, a country that you're supposed to represent, but as far as I'm concerned, you're a traitorous pig shit. But the point remains the same. Scotland has seen a relatively small number of the immigration to the UK that England has seen in particular. England has been hit the hardest. Scotland has been relatively unshaken. Still seen a noticeable amount in certain parts of the country, but at large, overall, hardly any in comparison. So it's rather easy to sit there and grandstand. Hostile environment. You're full of shit.
It will drown thousands of businesses and key industries in red tape and massive fees, and it will deprive our public services of talented and desperately needed workers. It will push different nations and regions of the United Kingdom towards depopulation.
Depopulation. Here's that excuse being rolled out again. Depopulation. That's a good one. As I've stated in many videos before, and I don't particularly enjoy going over all ground, but for the purpose of this video, I'll try to keep it short. For at least 20 years, the SNP, or the Scottish Government, the UK Government, in fact European nations as a whole, their governments have known, with the UN coming out with their paper regarding replacement migration 20 years ago, and they were talking about if trends continued, if things continued as they were, then over time specific or certain countries would begin to see populations decline to a point where they would be considered below replacement level. In those 20 years, what have any of the governments in question done to rectify these issues? And in the 12 years of power, what have the Rainbow Unicorn Party done to rectify these issues? Nobody is saying that they could wave a magic wand and incentivise native births and all their Christmases would come at once, but it's a start. You could make it easier for families. You could promote family values in school. You could incentivise marriage. But instead of that, you want to open the borders to people who are not ethnically Scottish to come over here and drop sprogs or children to bring up our population. Now let's play that little theory to its conclusion, shall we? What happens in about 100 years from now, 200 years from now, if Scotland even exists by that point? But let's just say for argument's sake it does. You ain't going to have a Scotland full of Scottish people, ethnically Scottish people. No, you're not. You're going to have a country full of people who are descendants from elsewhere. And that's not an issue in manageable numbers. But this idea of opening the borders and simply replacing us, that is what he is saying. That is what's been discussed here. In layman's terms, right enough, but it's still the same. They're talking about replacement migration, depopulation. If we don't open our borders, this catastrophic, so-called catastrophic draconian bill is going to harm our progress going forward due to depopulation. What are they doing to rectify the issue? What are they doing until such time when they have the power to open the borders? What have they done in all the years they have been in power to rectify depopulation? Well, considering the fact they're rolling out policy after policy after policy in school, which is polar opposite to anything related to family values, such as promoting feminism, such as promoting gender stereotypes and the need to eradicate them, such as promoting diversity and inclusion, such as promoting the LGBT emphasis on the T and gender identity ideology, etc. I could go on. Everything under the social justice umbrella going. That's really going to work in the future to potentially rectify depopulation. Now, it sounds to me as if your policies are in confliction with the rhetoric being espoused here by this specky little shitbag. Because as far as I'm concerned, everything that they are doing, told to by the UN, of course, will lead to depopulation. And their answer to depopulation seems to be rather convenient, like the same as every other country in this position. Opening the borders to third world migration, so-called highly skilled or low skilled. And if you say no, if you disagree, you're a far-right neo-Nazi. The idea of opening your borders and allowing people into this country to replace us, to have children because we're not having them, should be ringing every alarm bell going, because that in itself eradicates the concept of us being native to this land. And that's my biggest bugbear. That's always been my biggest bugbear. The continual dismantling of who we are as a people in order to accommodate other people to come here, and then further on down the line allow them to replace us, essentially, or breed alongside us. Then the tables will turn, the demographics will shift, but it's okay because it's progressive, yeah?
And drive a wedge between us and our European neighbours.
Drive a wedge between us and our European neighbours.
In short, Madam Deputy Speaker...
You mean drive a wedge between us and other European governments? Because I hate to break it to you, Stuart Big Boy Migrant Bootlicking McDonald. Sorry. Most European people, you know, ethnically German or Germanic, Nordic, etc., quite a lot of them are sick of the European Union. Quite a lot of them are sick of the very same things that you claim we're all in favour of.
This bill brings to an end the one part of the UK migration system that works well.
The one part of the UK system that works well. I wonder what it could be.
Free movement of people.
The one part of the UK that works well. Free movement of people. The very same thing that the majority of people in the UK don't want.
Instead, it expands the reach of the UK's own domestic rules, a complicated mess of burning injustice and bureaucracy. And that is why the SNP, without any hesitation, will be voting against this awful bill.
What a show.
But this awful bill was made even worse by its appalling timing. Pushing ahead with this bill in the midst of a public health and economic crisis, and without paying heed to the recent Windrush review, is spectacular.
What has that got to do with an immigration bill? They're two separate issues. A so-called mistake, whatever side of the fence you sit on in relation to Theresa May and the Tory party and the Windrush generation and whatnot, it's irrelevant to the discussion at hand. But they deliberately muddy the waters and try to conflate the two because they're trying to attribute this narrative of the Windrush scandal being born out of racism. And they're trying to attribute that to the idea of ending freedom of movement and replacing it with some points-based system or whatever it is.
Spectacularly misjudged, and shows the Home Office remains totally out of touch with reality and completely out of touch with public opinion.
Is that so? I love when they do this. They're so full of shit. More Scots think immigration levels are too high, but the SNP says Scotland is welcome to all. The SNP has said Scotland remains a welcoming home for all, despite a new poll finding a growing number of Scots believe that too many people are entering the UK. This was a poll last year, the most up-to-date one, if I'm not mistaken. Another one here, poll reveals sharp rise in opposition to immigration. Almost half of Scots want numbers reduced. Totally out of touch with public opinion. I think that might be the SNP, don't you think? And talking about this being draconian, etc., etc., may I remind folks that in 2014, the independence referendum, their white paper, their talk of what an independent Scotland's attitude to immigration would be, well, it says right here, with independence, Scotland will have a full range of powers needed to keep our people and communities safe, to reduce crime, to take a coherent approach to tackling crime, and to create stronger and cohesive communities by diversifying them, thus making them less cohesive. You know, it's great strategy, great logic. A security and intelligence agency will ensure the safety and security of Scotland's citizens, not the Scots anymore, you know, the ethnic Scots, not citizens. The first responsibility of any government within strict legal controls determined by the Parliament. We plan a controlled, points-based system to support the migration of skilled workers for the benefit of Scotland's economy. A points-based system. These people are nothing short of lying, diabolical, fucking hypocrites. Then we have Ben McPherson, who has an infatuation with immigration because they come over here and they pick our fruit. It's not near enough word for word what he said on a radio interview on my channel. Anyway, his letter to the Home Office. Is it the Home Office, sorry? The COVID-19 non-existent crisis because the borders are open, but we can't say that because it goes against the narrative of immigration. Has shown the UK's reliance on key workers who've made their home here. Now, they're not all in the NHS. The bulk of the NHS is made up of British people. So, white British people, may I add. So to talk about key workers and the UK's reliance on so-called key workers, you've got to understand that the demand, the continual increase in demand, is brought about by the increase in the population, which is in complete contradiction to this idea of demographic decline for British people or Scottish people. If there wasn't so many people in the country, there wouldn't be the need for the demand. So the immigrants that are here that happen to be quote-unquote key workers, we need to focus on them. We've come to find that we have a reliance for these people. And even if we did have a reliance, or we do have a reliance on these people, that doesn't justify continuing the floodgates or continuing to open the borders to more and more to come in here. It makes no sense. What is you people's obsession with immigration? Anyway, it says here, I would like to explore how we can apply a regional aspect to the migration system, for instance by weighting or awarding additional points to encourage more migrants to work outside of London and the South East. So you want to encourage more people to come to the UK and not focus on London. So you want more migration to the UK all across the UK. You want to entice people, a bit like the Canadian scheme they've got going just now, where they're trying to find people and entice people into the little suburban towns outside of cities because too many immigrants focus on in cities, or home in on cities even. You're trying to do the same thing. The Scottish Government previously supported the MAC's recommendation to pilot a scheme to attract and retain migrants in remote rural areas, and I would be very happy to work collaboratively with the Home Office on the design and implementation of such a pilot. You getting this, folks? This is your government. This is the SNP. You're proud of yourself for voting for them. They dangle their little independence card. You'll go out and clap for them on a Thursday while they talk quite openly in front of your face that they intend to replace you. Oh, the Scots ain't having enough children. Why is that? Well, we're promoting that white men are bastards in school and that feminism's the way to go. So we've got Abdul and the Africans coming in to have children on their behalf. Great little scheme they got going. Rural areas. Yeah, that's right. And of course, it says here demographics as well as the question of future skills. Needs. The COVID-19 pandemic and resulting economic shock should provide an important opportunity to reconsider the UK government's overall aim of reducing levels of inward migration into the UK, which even before the COVID-19 pandemic, quote unquote, was projected to have a deeply damaging impact on Scotland. Without inward migration, the UK faces population decline, which will disproportionately affect Scotland. It's highly doubtful whatever we can afford an increasingly dependency ratio at a time when the tax base will likely have been severely eroded. Well, you put a lockdown in place. You, the UK government, all these governments put these lockdowns in place. Don't then sit there after the fact and complain about economic catastrophe, because as far as I'm concerned, this is my honest opinion, I believe they deliberately brought this lockdown on in order to destroy our economy. Anyway, it's abundantly clear that reducing migrant numbers will detrimentally impact on many sectors and industries that are particularly key to Scotland and the other devolved governments, including social care, agriculture, food processing, manufacturing, construction and tourism. Okay, well, let's get one thing straight. They're continuously talking about the rise of automation, this fourth industrial revolution. So explain to me how in the fuck these industries are still going to need X amount of people for the years ahead. As far as I'm aware, there was talk of 20,000 odd job vacancies in the tourism industry. Well, in case you haven't noticed, there's a hell of a lot of people that are unemployed, and that ain't going to go down anytime soon, considering there's a bulk of industries that will probably never be able to recover from this. So why don't you try and employ them? Why don't you try and do something for your own people? And as for this shit about food processing and agriculture, etc., so fruit picking as per usual from Ben McPherson. Construction, well, we've not got enough of our own in construction, and we wouldn't need people in construction if you weren't continuously building houses and developing new projects to accommodate more people that you've invited in this continual vicious circle that goes round and round and round while we get shafted in the process, man. And on that note, I'm done. Peace.